Okay, yan. So good morning again. We will continue discussing personality. So this time, developing instruments to assess personality na tayo, which is the thing that you are doing right now. Yung test development niyo is basically that's personality. Kasi mas madaling gawin yung personality compared sa intelligence testing. Kung mapapansin niyo, walang methods na sinabi about intelligence testing kasi that's very complicated. Very specialized na yun. Usually, mga PhD na yung gumagawa ng mga nun. So, I myself do not have an idea on how they are developing IQ tests. No? But in terms of personality test, yun, I have an idea. And kaya ngayon yung ginagawa natin ngayon, which is yung item writing Google Forms and whatnot. So, that's our project for this semester. Maliban pa doon sa psych report. Diba? Bugbog sarado kayo ng project. But I hope you are doing well. Sana. Yun. So developing personal instruments about personality, I think I've already touched on this on your TOP, lalo na nung sa part ni na Cattell, tsaka ni BFI, kasi pangalan BFI, Costa and McCree, tsaka sina Hans Ising. No? So ganun lang, di-discuss lang natin ulit kung paano, and basically parang di-discuss lang natin ulit yung ginagawa nyo ngayon. No? Clarification lang din. Okay, so how to develop? So first way of developing a personality test is actually logic and reason, which unfortunately sometimes nawawala to, no? Kasi we are very bogged down by the format, no? Yung typical training sa senior high school. Nambabash na naman ako. So, sa mga senior high school style, di ba? Sa senior high school napansin ko, very obsessed sa format, very obsessed sa kung paano isusulat, konti lang ang kung ano yung susulat in the first place. So in developing a test, of course, kailangan natin gamitin yun ng logika, no? It will dictate what content will be covered. As I mentioned nga, for example, you are measuring you want to measure extroversion, no? Of course, it will make sense that some of the questions or most of the questions will target extroversion. This is common sense na, no? Unfortunately, I have experiences na kung saan parang they are measuring extroversion, and then of course siyempre magpapahanap ako ng mga basis na test, no? Mga criterion test, and then may nahanap nga sila big 5 factor indicator. Tapos i-adapt nga nila yun, kaso hindi lang extroversion ang in-adapt nila, lahat ng factors ng BFI in-adapt nila. Asan yung logic doon? Kasi logically speaking, you are just adapting extroversion. So dapat nandun din yun. Dapat hindi ibig sabihin na yun yung criterion test mo, i-adapt mo na lahat, because that is not logical, no? In everything we do naman dapat talaga may logic. Hindi naman kunyari kasi may mga times na may binibigay na instructions yung mga teacher na sometimes it's not applicable with what you are doing. So we have to take heart, no? We have to take a stand that there are some things that our teachers do not know about what you are doing. So you can do your own. And then if you're not sure, no, pwede mo naman i-confirm sa mga professors, sa mga teachers ninyo. Okay? Mas maganda yung ganun kasi yung parang mga robot na parang kung ano lang ang sinabi yun lang ang gagawin. Of course, mas matalino kayo sa mga robot. And dapat ganun lagi yung ginagawa natin. Okay? Be logical in everything we do, lalo na sa psychological assessment, because logic here is very important. Akala nyo, pumasok ako sa psychology kasi akala ko feelings about sa feelings lahat. Well, that's fake news because psychology is statistics, okay? Anyway, so that's logic and reason. And then of course, dapat may theory din. So this is also the reason why I asked you to look for a criterion test. Kasi usually mga criterion test na yan, meron silang mga theoretical basis. No? Yung mga theoretical basis na to kasi, sila yung mag-a-anchor nung mga questions ninyo or yung mismong instrument ninyo. Kasi kung walang theory yan, parang bara-bara na lang, parang magiging walang direction. And kapag walang direction yung paper, of course, hindi siya maganda. No? Parang pag yung mga tao, pag wala silang direction sa buhay, hindi mo alam paano sila spellingin. Diba? Ganun din yung mangyayari sa test. Kung walang meaning, walang theory yung test, walang pinaniniwalaan yung test, hindi maganda. Kaya nga, I'm always advocating nga, or I always advise you to look for a criterion test. And hopefully, you read the criterion test. Ito pa yung problema kasi minsan hahanap lang ng criterion test. Hindi babasahin kung saan galing yung test, hindi babasahin kung ano yung theoretical basis ng test. Ano mangyayari? Hindi nila maintindihan yung test. So pag i-adapt nila, hindi nila makukuha. Kumbaga, hindi nila magigets, no? Iwasan natin yun. Kailangan basahin pa din. No? Alam ko tamad kayo magbasa, yung iba sa inyo tamad magbasa. Pero kailangan nyo magbasa. Okay? In psychology, it's more of reading. No? Kung sa engineering, more on solving. No? Sa psychology, it's more on reading. Ngayon, kung ayaw nyo magbasa, well, yung lagi ko nga sinasabi, pwede na kayo mag-shift, di ba? Habang maaga pa. So, that is theory. So, may theory tayo, may logic tayo. All of this so that merong basis yung mga questions na susulat natin. Okay? Hindi sila random na questions. And then once na meron na tayong mga questions, of course, doon napapasok yung mga statistics natin or yung mga data reduction methods. So this includes several statistical techniques collectively known as factor analysis or cluster analysis. So but more on factor analysis yung ginagamit natin. So na-discuss ko na kahit paano yung factor analysis ninyo. So these methods differ on their approaches, but the main goal is to look for patterns or factors in the sea of data. So factor analysis is basically, and this is an oversimplification, i-correlate lahat ng mga questions. And as you all know, pag correlated yung mga questions, for example, questions number 1, 5, 7, 8 are correlated, it might be the case that they are measuring the same thing. Okay? So yung factor analysis ang gagawin, iraran niya lahat ng factor, lalakaran niya lahat ng correlations, and then titingnan kung merong pattern na lumalabas. Of course, that is again an oversimplification. Mas marami pang explanation yan, but this is not a statistics class, so I will not go into detail. But basically, it's like that. Okay? These correlations can have levels or hierarchy. Nagagawa lang yung levels and hierarchy sa confirmatory factor analysis or CFA. By the way, yung tatlong main kinds of factor analysis is first is yung pinakaluma na hindi na masyadong ginagamit. Kung gagamitin mo man, baka pagtawanan ka sa research community is yung principles components analysis or PCA. No? Although minsan ginagamit pa rin siya, especially if hindi available or hindi pwede yung data sa CFA or EFA, pero it's not advisable to use PCA, principles component analysis, because it's very weak, no? Yung ginagamit usually is yung EFA, exploratory factor analysis, or confirmatory factor analysis. Na-mention ko na kung ano ibig sabihin nun. Basically, exploratory, you do not have any idea with regards to structure ng test. Kumbaga, di mo alam kung meron bang subskills sa mga questions na to, kung ano yung mga factors na lalabas, wala kang idea. But in CFA, meron kang idea. So parang kukunin mo yung model mo, yung hypothetical model mo, and then i-compare mo sa data na nag-gather mo kung fit sila. No? Fit yung analysis of fit kasi yung inaano sa CFA. Okay? Tuturuan ko kayo ng CFA, yung basic CFA niyan next year, once na tapos na kayo sa data gathering nyo. Yun yung gagamitin natin kasi CFA is the most recent one. Okay? And mas applicable yun sa ginagawa natin since meron na kayong criterion test. Meron na tayong idea kung ano yung structure ng mga question, mga test na din-develop nyo. Okay? So, yun yung factor analysis. So, basically, it's test development, no? Yung diniscuss natin. Logic and reason, why? No? Yung logic, reason, and theory, that is the why and how. And actually, why lang. That is the why of your research or your instrument. And then data reductions. Methods is the how. Okay? So, yeah. So far, do you have any questions or clarifications with regards to developing a personality test? Clear naman? Okay. Sige, parang clear naman, no? It's either clear or inaanto kayo or wala kayo na gets. But anyway, i-review na lang if ever man or just email me if you have questions. Okay? So next would be, ayan, na-discuss ko na to. The example. Okay, so yung primary example ng personality test na meron tayo na very very sikat, no, is Big Five factor. Hindi masyadong ginagamit yung MBTI. So again, yung MBTI, it has some issues with reliability and validity. Na to the point na yung ibang mga critics, mga harsh critics ng MBTI is treating it as if it's almost the same with horoscopes, no. It's not accurate. It's very random minsan, no. So ang mas prefer is yung mga ganito, Big Five factor and even 16PF, no. Okay, pwede rin yung kay Eysenck. Although yung kay Eysenck kasi very limited dahil three factors lang. Parang yung iba sinasabi kulang. Pero kung titingnan mo kasi, 'di ba, as we discussed in TOP, yung 3 factor na yun, pwede yung panghatiin, magiging 5 yun, no. Sa psychoticism, pwede mong anihin yun. Pwede mong i-split pa yun. Psychoticism can have the openness to change, tsaka conscientiousness. Tapos yung neuroticism, pwede mong hatiin ng, hindi ko alam neuroticism ba or extroversion, basta kung nasa yung agreeableness. No? Although nasa psychoticism din yata yung agreeableness. So, kung titingnan natin, kung pag-aaralan natin, kung babasahin natin. Okay? Wala sa book yun. Wala sa book yung mga sinabi kong yun. No? It's just my observation. So you all know, kapag kasi nagbabasa ako, I always try to apply other knowledge, apply other concepts or principles to the mix para mas maging interesting naman. Okay? So, ang parang so far sa mga readings ko talaga, there are Big Five factors. Actually, there's a new one, Hexaco naman. Hindi ko na add dito. Yung Hexaco, parang basically it's Big Five factor plus humility. Apparently, humility is also a personality trait, no? And it makes sense naman. Hexaco, humility, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness, and may neuroticism din. So Hexaco is quite good. I've read some of its papers, and so far siguro baka yun na yung new frontier niya, no? Pero si Big Five factor as of now, siya pa rin yung stable, siya pa rin yung parang pinaka-nag-aaralan. So if you're interested about Hexaco, you can just Wikipedia it, no? Maganda naman yung entry niya sa Wikipedia. Baka yun kaya gawin ko research. Anyway, so Hexaco, humility yung dinagdag. Nawala ako. Anyway, so Big Five factor, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism, developed by Costa and McRae. And again, di sila yung nauna, parang sila lang ang nag-develop. So it can be measured by NeoPi, Neo Personality Inventory Device, NeoPi-R. But meron din mga free version to, yung BFFI, yung sinagutan ninyo. No? That's the free version. So it has 30 elements or facets that define each domain. Kasi parang 5 factors with 6 sub-factors each. No? For example, extroversion has 6 factors if I'm not mistaken. Hindi naman lahat 6. No? Parang hindi ko memorize. Hindi mo kailangan i-memorize. Basta that is the Big Five. Yung Big Five, if I'm not mistaken, this is a result of EFA and combination of EFA and CFA. Okay? Ito yung mga Big Five factors. So extroversion, alam ko na-discuss ko na to, pero discuss natin again. So extroversion, ang mga taong highly extroverted are very people seeker, no? Paano sila? Gusto nila ng experience, kumbaga. They're very social, they're very assertive. Okay? Maano sila? Magaling sila makitungo sa ibang tao. at mas gusto nilang may kasama lagi. Okay? Yung mga low naman in points of extroversion, they're introverted. So most probably lagi silang mag-isa, mas prefer nilang mag-isa, no? And mas okay silang kumbaga mas okay sila sa solitude. Hindi sila nabobore. Kasi yung mga extroverted, pag sila na mag-isa, parang nade-depress sila or something like that. Yung introverted hindi naman gaano, parang sakto lang, 'di ba? So I'm a highly introverted person. So introverted ako kahit hindi lata, kahit sa unang tingin, mukha akong extroverted pag nagsasalita ako sa harap, pero this is just another persona of mine. I'm nagpapanggap lang ako extroverted pag nasa klase ako. Hindi na nagpapanggap, pero I have the extroverted side, but overall I'm introverted, no. Kumbaga ano lang ako, yung hindi naman ako super introvert to the point na 1 yung extroversion ko. Mga 3 siguro yung introversion ko. So, meron mga spectrums yan, okay? And then meron mga extroverted na very mahiyain in reality, di ba? May mga ganun eh. So, may mga nuances. That's why it's very important na sa psychological report niyo. Tingnan niyo rin yung other than the test, tignan niyo din yung background information ng client, okay? And then neuroticism naman, this is emotional stability, although baligtad. Highly neurotic people or ang mga tao mataas ang high neuroticism. Ang mga tao mataas ang neuroticism, very unstable sila. Ibig sabihin, mabilis silang ma-anxious. Okay? So anxiety is normal. So may mga taong mataas ang anxiety, may mga taong mababa ang anxiety. Both have pros and cons, no? Pag highly neurotic ka, of course, syempre nakakainis 'yon dahil very very ano ka sa emotions mo, very very nasasway ka agad ng emotions mo. That is highly neurotic people. Pag low in neuroticism ka naman, ikaw yung taong chill. Yung parang, sige, okay lang yan, wala problema. So, low anxiety yun. One disadvantage, no, kala natin pag low anxiety ka, it's okay. It's not that simple. Kasi I myself is a low anxiety person. On the surface. On the surface, I'm very calm and collected, no? But once na nagkaroon ng nagkandaleche-leche, yun doon ako ma-anxious. But generally speaking, I'm emotionally stable. Ang isang disadvantage nito is minsan na-over kampante, no? Kampante moves, ang tawag nga nila. So, ang tendency is, for example, may exam, no? Hindi ako mag-review. Hindi ako nag-review ng college ako. I'm not reviewing my exam, for my quizzes, especially minor subjects, because they're just minor, no? Anong pakialam ko sa minor subjects? Ako lang yun, huwag niyo akong gagayahin. Kasi wala naman eh. Wala namang problema sa akin. And then sometimes even major subjects I don't review. Kaya minsan talagang ano. And this low anxiety of mine became a hurdle nung hindi naman hurdle, but it became a slight problem nung board exam tsaka nung comprehensive exam ko. Sa board exam ko lang hindi ako kasi nung board exam hindi ko ni-review yung psychological assessment. Partly nakalimutan ko na 40% siya and partly nag-enjoy ako masyado sa Absci. Hindi ako anxious masyado. Kasi in the first place, after sa psychometry, parang nag-test ako ng psychometry siya kasi bored ako, parang something like, or kailangan, hindi naman kailangan, parang, sige nga, total, nandyan naman, ba't di ko pa i-take? Ganun lang ako psychometrician board exam. Kasi as early as that time, I know that psychometrician board exam is not, the psychometrician license is not that powerful and I'm planning to do masters naman talaga. And then, nung comprehensive exam, due to my low anxiety, no, yung parang kampante, ayun, bumagsak ako dun sa statistics and research part. No? So, but after that, maganda naman, talagang pinag-aralan ko yung stat. Kaya parang ngayon, na-overstudy naman yata ako sa stat ngayon. Diba? So, but it's all good naman. So the point is, there's a cons and pros for highly anxious people and low anxious people. So yung mga nuances na yan, kailangan alam natin. And then openness to experience. Openness to experience refers to the intellectual curiosity, imagination, aesthetic sensitivity, and preference for variety. I'm a highly open person. So, maano ko sa mga ideas. Ideas ako more on open. No? Pero for example, sa food or choosing a food or choosing a drink, I stick to my guns. No? Ayokong ma-disappoint lagi sa mga trying of new things ko. Pero in terms of being open-minded to ideas, open-minded to business, not the power kind of business, I can accommodate and I can study things. That's why people with high openness tends to become highly curious, no? Kasi nga open sila, di ba? Yung receptivity nila. Ngayon, kung mababang openness to experience mo, ito yung mga klase ng tao na very close-minded. Parang kung ano yung pinaniniwalaan nila, yun lang, wala nang iba. Okay? So they are very traditional in a sense. Yun yung parang nila, very traditional sila, very, very conventional. Kung ano yung uso, dun sila, di ba? And then agreeableness. Agreeableness naman would be independence or accommodation. Pag highly agreeable ka, itong accommodation na to kay Catel to, no? Ito big five. Yung pag highly agreeable ka, you're parang mas ka sa social harmony. Parang oo na lang na oo. Mga extreme, yung mga hindi makatanggi. That is highly agreeable people. And then people with low in agreeableness, just like me, are skeptical. I always ask. I always, ganun ako lagi. Sige nga, ganyan. Tapos, I can say no. I can always say no to people. Pag ayoko. Pag ayoko yung isang bagay, ayoko siya. Pag ayoko yung isang tao, ayoko siya. Ganun ako. I have low agreeableness. But this is mitigated naman with openness kasi even though I'm low in agreeableness, pero kung mako-convince mo ako through logical reasoning and whatnot, I can be manageable. No? Agreeableness, if I'm not mistaken, 4 lang siya. Out of 10, 4 lang siya. And then conscientiousness is the planning, organizing, and following through. Ito yung OC-ness na sinasabi. No? Hey sir, don't use adjectives. Well, ganun talaga, kailangan natin minsan hiramin yung populars, popular ano. But again, don't do that. Don't make your disorders your adjectives. Okay. But OC people, mga taong merong obsessive compulsive disorder, usually they have high conscientiousness. Maano sila, very detail oriented, very obsessed sa details, no. And conscientious people, they are mga highly conscientious people, they are very reliable because they can be obsessed to details, but that obsession to details is kumbaga mas nagagamit nila in their planning, in their organizing, no. So kaya nilang gumawa ng mga bagay-bagay na imposible yung mga highly conscientious people. I myself is a highly conscientious person, if hindi pa obvious, no. I tend to plan, I tend to organize, no? I'm a highly organized person, and I usually follow through, but it's not perfect because life is not that perfect. Okay? So yung mga low conscientiousness naman, sila yung mga parang sabog, no? Ibig sabihin sa sabog, yung parang wala silang sa control. They let it be, okay? Ganun yung mga low conscientiousness. Okay? So that's the basic interpretation of each of these traits. It becomes interesting when we are now combining, no? Yung ano ba yung mga magagandang combinations, no? For example ko na lang yung sarili ko para mas malapit, para mas madali, okay? Maliban sa narcissism ko. Anyway, so for example, me, I'm low extroversion ako, so introverted ako, high in neuroticism. Openness ko is high, agreeableness ko is low, conscientiousness ko is high. So sabi nila, yung mga taong mataas ang openness to experiences plus they are highly conscientious, they are the scholars, no? They're the magaling sila mag-aral. Bakit sila magaling mag-aral? Kasi open to experience sila, they're very curious, and then they can organize data. They can organize information effectively. So that's why they can remember, they can manipulate information quite easily compared to other people. So maybe that's the reason why I'm highly capable in terms of academic. Although to be clear, nung bata ako hindi ako nag-top 1 lang ako nung kinder hanggang grade 3. Ay, grade 2. Tapos grade 3, top 3. Tapos nagkandalit-silit sila ng grade 4. Hindi na ako achiever. No? Parang high average lang, but not the top kind of person. Kasi nagsawa ako. Mas gusto ko natututo kaysa nag-aaral. Kaya ako nag-aaral. And then, yung agreeableness ko is low. Okay? So, kung titignan mo yung tatlong combination ng agreeableness is low, kumbaga nate-temper ang openness to experience ko. Hindi ako agad nasiswindle, hindi ako agad naloloko kasi nga mababa yung agreeableness, no? Kahit open ako sa experience, hindi ako madaling lokohin. Parang ganun. Although minsan naloloko ko, pero hindi naman lagi. Okay? And then, for example, yung mga taong introverted, and then, I'm highly introverted, but at the same time, yung neuroticism ko is low lang. So, stable ako. Kasi di ba usually kapag introverted, tapos mataas yung neuroticism, ibig sabihin emotionally unstable, mas mataas yung tendency mo to develop mood disorders and anxiety disorders. Kasi nga, isolated ka na nga, tapos mataas pa yung neuroticism mo. Buti na lang sa akin, bumalanse yung introversion ko tsaka neuroticism ko. Okay? So yung mga ganong klaseng parang gagawan mo sila ng kwento. Ano yung ibig sabihin kapag low extroversion plus high in neuroticism and low in agreeableness? May mga ganon. Although that is advanced, I'm not asking you naman to have that kind of detailed assessment of your client, but it's quite interesting to do that, no? Doon ako nag-enjoy actually. That's why mas maganda kung yung makuha yung mga scores, makuha yung mga points sa BFI nyo is mga hindi average, kasi average is boring. Kasi for example, average lahat yan, sasabihin mo, average lang po itong taong to. mahirap siya gawa ng kwento, di ba? So, yun yung kala nyo gusto nyo average lahat, no? Pero hindi. Kung ikaw yung assessor, gusto mo merong extremes kahit pa paano. Okay? Yung mga delikadong combination, for example, high in openness and then high in neuroticism. Yung mga taong ganun, may propensity sila to develop psychosis, no? Mga delusions and hallucinations. Kasi open sila sa experience. So, mga experience na minsan hindi na maganda, no? And then highly agreeable pa. So, that's highly neurotic. So, yung anxiety nila is tumataas. Kasi nga, open sila sa maraming experience, open sila sa maraming events, situations. So, open din sila sa mga extreme na situations na pwede mangyari sa kanila. So dahil mababataas ang neuroticism, ayun, may tendency talaga silang magkaroon ng mga disorders. Okay? So yung mga ganong klaseng mga combination, you can actually infer something when you look at those kind of combinations. Okay? So mas flexible siya kumpara sa MBTI. Yun yung gusto ko sa BFI. Sama pa yung humility niyan, yung hex ako. Mas interesting. So ayun. So far, do you have any questions with regards to that? Nag-gets nyo naman ba yung pinagsasabi ko? Nagets nyo naman. Sana nagets ninyo, no? Okay, sige. So, next, itong yung nasabi ko kanina, yung BF5, they are very, exclusive sila for normal population. BF5 and CATEL's 16PF are exclusive for normal population. So, a basic item writing and then basic item writing with theoretical basis plus reduction methods will suffice. Now, there are some personality tests that are very targeted siya sa mga abnormal groups, no? Like for example, depression or depressive symptoms, anxiety, no? or even yung mga ibang mga personality trait na parang exclusive lang sa mga taong may disorder. So yung mga yon, of course, hindi natin iba yung magiging method nila. Iba yung magiging magkakaroon ng konting modification sa kanilang method. And one such modification is yung criterion groups, no? Sa criterion group, it is a reference group of test taker who share specific characteristics and whose responses to test items serve as a standard, according to which items will be included in or discarded from the final version of the scale. For example, ano na lang natin, discuss na lang natin siya. No? For example, we are creating a test about depressive symptoms. So, of course, it will make sense to include people who are already diagnosed, no, with depression. Kasi nga, for sure, itong mga to, meron silang depression. So, mataas probably, or mataas usually, yung kanilang score sa mga depression scale. Tama? So, if we are creating a test about depression, ang gagawin natin is administer the pool of items to two groups. One group, yung criterion group natin, yung mga taong may criteria na sila yung magiging criteria natin, no, na may depression sila. So that is the first group. And then you will also administer the test to the group 2. Randomly selected. Ibig sabihin, they may or they may not have the trait. No? They may or they may not have depression. Okay? So the reason is, kasi, for example, sa group 1, group 2 kasi may normal population yan. So may mga norms yan. And then sa group 1, for example, dahil depressed sila, ang expected mo dapat yung kanilang score is significantly higher compared sa group 2. Yun yung first requirement. Okay? Kasi pag mas mataas pa yung group 2 kaysa sa group 1, no? Mas mataas yung mga randomly selected people sa mga taong depressed talagang meron ng depression, no? Then, of course, hindi mag-make sense yun. Ibig sabihin, yung mga items mo are not powerful enough to detect depression. Kasi hindi niya na-detect yung mga depressed na tao. Okay? So parang sila yung litmus test natin. Parang sila yung criterion nga natin. So kung ang test natin is na-detect yung mga tao may depression, then it's a good test. Okay? So that's empirical criterion keying, the process of using criterion groups to develop test items. Okay? Ginagawa to sa mga abnormal population, abnormal test, no? Mga test na nagde-detect ng abnormality. So, and then conduct item analysis to select items indicative of membership, and then items in the preliminary pool that discriminate between membership. Meron din doon yung mga, kasi parang part din ng item analysis doon is yung anong items ba yung talagang mataas ang discriminatory power or discriminatory index, no, in detecting people with depression. So, pwede mo rin i-compute din yun. And then, ko-compare siya sa mga questions na hindi gaanong powerful in discriminating people with depression. So, tatanggalin yung mga hindi ganun kataas ang score sa discriminatory index. Alam niyo pa yung discriminatory index, no? Hopefully alam niyo pa. And then obtain data on test performance from standardized sample. And then the performance data for group 2 members on items incorporated in the final form. So basahin niyo na lang yung basta in summary, it's just like that, no? We are using the criterion group to confirm if our test is actually measuring what it intends to measure. It's also a form of validity. Okay? So, yan. Yung MMPI, ganun yung ginawa. Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It's a very powerful tool in detecting psychopathology. Ang latest niya ngayon is MMPI 3. No, kaka-release lang this year. If I'm not mistaken, noong September lang yata na-release yung MMPI 3, kaya hindi ko na-update to. But in MMPI 2, meron akong MMPI 2 dito, pero hindi pwedeng pakita kasi copyright issues. Ano siya, 300 plus items, okay? With several subscales. And then again, meron nga siyang mga validity scales din. Sa MMPI 2, nag-add sila ng demoralization. Part 2 ng stress, no, sa stress disorders, PTSD, even sa depression, may demoralization din na nangyayari minsan. So bagong subscale siya. Okay? So in answering this, sabi dun sa manual, picky si manual eh. Sabi 40 minutes to 2 hours. Pero never pa ako nakita ng taong nag-take nito ng 40 minutes lang. Usually it's 2 hours. Wala pa ako nakitang 1 hour actually na nag-take nito. Usually 2 hours. Kahit highly normal pa yan, 2 hours sila nagte-take ng test. Kasi and then after taking this test, nakaka-drain, no? parang pinagsakloban ka lang langit at lupa kasi talagang kinonfront mo yung sarili mo about the questions, and then parang yung mga ibang questions kasi they're very ridiculous, no? Tapos yung syempre, imagine nyo 300 items na test, kahit yes or no lang yan, nakakabagot yun, no? So ayun, yun yung MMPI. So yung MMPI ginamitan siya ng empirical criterion keying. MMPI A, a version for adolescents naman to. Okay? So far, do you have any questions with regards to the development of personality test? Clear naman? Okay, sige. So next would be personality assessment methods. So there are, other than the paper and pen test, there are other personality assessment methods. Okay? So, and we can further subdivide them. Ganito, in personality assessment, there are two. No? There are two kinds. Objective, which is yung standardized, yung mga personality test and all. And then the subjective, which is actually hindi subjective ang tawag, projective test. No? Yung mga projective test, they're on the subjective side naman. Okay? So objective methods of personality assessment contain short answer items for which assessee task is to select one response or two or more on the provided. So ito yung basically objective methods is yung standardized test. Kaya sila objective kasi meron silang mga norms, meron silang reliability, meron silang validity. So ang mga test na ganun, objective ang tawag. But don't be misled. No? Hindi ibig sabihin na objective yung method is purely objective na yung scores. Kasi as you remember, usually they are self-report. Self-report is objective. So it's quite misleading sometimes to say that standardized test is highly objective because it's not. it's like any other things naman in social sciences, it's complicated. Right? So the one advantage of objective test is that yung quickness, no, mabilis lang kasi dahil meron ka ng scoring, no, meron ka ng interpretation guide, and usually ngayon sa computer, no, katapos mo ng test meron ng interpretation. Okay? So that's one a main advantage of objective methods. And one advantage din is para mabawasan yung bias ng assessor. Kasi as we all know naman, we are humans, we have biases, we have our own limitations, okay? We have blind spots. So yung objective methods yung mag-fill in nun. Okay? But one disadvantage of objective methods, I don't know if nilagay ko dito, but one disadvantage of objective methods is they are just scores. For example, mataas ang extroversion mo. Yun na yun. Hindi nila sasabihin kung paano ka extroverted, paano mo nire-release, or paano mo in-express yung extroversion mo. Kasi iba-iba yung expression ng extroversion. Iba-iba yung expression ng openness. Kunyari sa akin, ang expression ko ng openness is more on the ideas. But on the experiences, for example, trying out new things, I'm not that kind of person. So yung mga nuances na yon, makukuha mo lang yon sa interview o kaya sa projective test. So ang mga objective tests, they are just limited to numbers. Okay? But of course, numbers are very important naman. Kumbaga, they are more objective than words. So kaya nga maganda, usually ang ginagawa sa mga battery of tests, meron ding projectives. Pero sa inyo walang projectives kasi hindi pa kayo nagma-masters. So ang psychometrician more on objective methods lang ang ginagamit. Okay? So kaya mas nag-focus tayo doon sa objective methods. Ngayon lang ulit lumitaw yung projective test. Pero in masters, meron isang subject doon na projective techniques. Yung pag-aaralan niyo lang lahat ng projective techniques. Ganun ka-complicated ang approach. Kailangan mo ng isang class, isang semester, or isang term for you to understand and study and even practice projective tests. But it's quite fun. Although baka ako lang. Nag-enjoy ako sa projective test. And then, of course, yung projective test kasi kailangan mo i-combine yung sa objective. So, medyo nuance siya. Okay? So, how objective our objective methods are, yun nga, sinabi ko. And inunahan ko na naman yung PowerPoint natin. But yun, some objective tests still require subjective judgment, like in the case of some tests to measure unresolved conflicts since responses are sentence or essay types. Meron mga ibang objective tests like yung sentence completion. Although sentence completion is considered as projective test na eh. But for example, yung Bender Gestalt. Bender Gestalt is, drawing naman. So kakopy mo yung isang figure, i-draw mo. So syempre, pag ikaw na assessor, i-check mo yung drawing. And parang may judgment call yung clinician doon. So may mga clinician na high standard, may mga clinician na very lenient. No? So may factor na ganun. And then of course, there's an issue of self-report, just as I mentioned. And the objective part is usually about the format of the test administration, scoring, and interpretation, but not necessarily the thing that is being measured. Okay? So that's objective methods for you. Yung mga ginagawa natin na test, those are objective methods. And yung mga ginawa nyo, objectives yung mga yun. Dahil wala kayong proj. Usually pag online, pag face-to-face classes, parang binibigyan ko naman ng parang binibigyan ko ng taste yung mga student in projective test. But of course, this is online class, so it's very limited. So baka pang ma-misinterpret niyo with regards sa projective test, kaya hindi ko na lang binibigay. Okay? So so far, do you have any questions with regards to objective methods? Clear naman? Clear naman siguro, no? So next would be yung projective methods, a technique of personality assessment in which some judgment of the assessee's personality is made on the basis of performance on a task that involves supplying some sort of structured or unstructured or incomplete stimuli. So ang theoretical basis nito or yung yung assumption nito is yung projective hypothesis. Na kung saan sinasabi na ang isang tao daw or lahat ng mga tao, they have the tendency to complete something that is ambiguous using their own personality, using their own experiences. Let's say, for example, meron ka nakitang isang scene. No? Ambiguous yung scene. Ibig sabihin ng ambiguous scene, hindi ka clear kung ano yung nangyayari sa picture. Sabi ng projective hypothesis, ang gagawin daw ng isang tao is gagamitin niya yung resources niya, aka yung personality niya, experiences niya, yung ways of thinking niya, to complete that ambiguous picture. And then yung mga information na ilalabas niya to complete that picture is part of his or her personality. Kasi saan niya pakukunin yan kung hindi sa sarili niya? Okay? So, depende sa sinabi niya, depende sa kwento niya, depende sa themes ng mga sinabi niya, then you can analyze a person's personality. Okay? This is highly reminiscent of Freud's idea of unconscious. Parang yung unconsciously, we are drawing from our experience. We project our personality to that ambiguous stimuli. And then yung mga information na sinusupply natin, that is part of our personality. Okay? So, yun yung projective hypothesis. Nagets niyo ba? Nagets niyo ba yung projective hypothesis? Sige, isa pa example. Let's say for example, merong isang scene. Okay, mamaya tignan na lang natin yung example para mas masaya. So, ang pinakasikat na projective method technique is yung Rorschach ink blot test na palagay ko is nakita nyo na sa internet na gumagalaw. No? I mean, gumagalaw, na nagkalat. So, they are ink blots. So, 5 ink blots are achromatic, minsan without color or black or white. So, and then the rest have colors. So, yung Rorschach ink blot test, basically, papakita yung ink blot and then tatanungin yung client, what do you see in this picture? Okay? So, yun yung process niya. So, as opposed to objective test na parang magsasagot lang yung projective test, after magsagot ng client, i-interpret mo pa yung ng client. And then even clients have different Kumbaga iba-iba yung mga sasabihin ng mga yan. So minsan wala sa manual yung mga sasabihin nila. So you have to make do of what you have. And then thematic apperception test, ito naman yung mga cards na kung saan ambiguous picture sila. Ibig sabihin, may scene na ambiguous, parang hindi natin alam kung ano talaga nangyayari, parang hindi clear. So ang gagawin is ipoproject ng tao yung ano nangyayari. Ang question din is, what is happening in this picture? What happened before? What is happening now? And what will happen in the future? Okay? So yun yung 30 cards siya, pero merong mga certain set of cards na binibigay depende sa client, kung lalaki, kung babae, kung children. Pero meron din naman na standard na 10 na kahit kanino pwedeng maibigay. Okay? So this is a sample of Rorschach ink block test. So what do you see in this picture? Sagutin niyo pero di ko na ma-interpret dahil di ako expert sa Rorschach. hindi ko pa napag-aralan yung Rorschach. So I'm not good at this. But in this TAT, napag-aralan ko na to, and I'm actually administering this test, no? Of course, with supervision of a psychologist sa mga clients namin. So this is actually a TET card. Okay, this is the card 1, my favorite card. Okay, sige, let's try. What happened in this picture? Ano yung nangyari? Before this picture, nangyari to. Then what is happening in this picture, and what will happen in the future? This picture. Okay? So, you can try to answer that. Try nyo answerin yan. Kahit verbal lang, kahit sa isip nyo lang. Feeling ko meron na kayong sagot. No? And usually yung sagot nyo, it involves it involves your self-image. Okay? Self-image, kumbaga, sino ka as a person. Kasi ipoproject mo yung sarili mo dito, sabi ng TET. Okay? Self-image and then goals, motivations in life. That's why this is my favorite kasi sabi nga din ng instructor ko nun, kahit ito lang yung pakita mo, solved na. Meron kang idea kung ano yung, lalo na ako nagmamadali. Meron kang idea kung ano yung personality ng isang tao. Especially yung self-image na, yung kanyang hope about the future, and even yung kanyang mga insecurities sa buhay. Okay? So, lalabas lahat doon. But of course, it's amazing, no? Parang to the point na parang popular tech na siya. But of course, again, this is only done by professionals. Wag natin i-self-diagnose or self-assess yung mga sarili natin based on these pictures lang. It's more complicated than that. And this is projective test, may have rich information. Ito kasi yung projective test maganda siyang source of information. Marami kang makukuhang information about sa client mo, sa mga kwento niya. Yun nga lang, hindi naman laging magandang over-information kasi not all information are useful, di ba? So not information are quality information. So you have to sort through ano ba talaga yung mga information about sa client na sinabi niya na you will use in your report. So it's quite complicated. So that's why it's not advisable for psychometricians that have a limited training to administer such tests. Okay? So hindi po ba siya risky? What if intentionally manghuhula lang po siya yung patient ng own interpretation niya, or kahit nang hula po possible na makahanap ng meaning behind that? Usually talaga manghuhula tayo dito. And kung ano man yung huhulaan mo, no? Ano man yung sasabihin mo about this picture, it will tell something about you. Of course, there's always a risk for lying. There's always a risk for kahit saan naman kahit sa mga objective test naman, may tendency na manghuhula yan, mangdadaya yan, no? Parang sasabihin niya hindi naman niya gusto or something. But of course, it boils down to the assessor, no? Kung paano niya establish yung rapport, ano ba yung reason for referral. So that parang ako kasi ang ginagawa ko, mga test answer honestly as possible so that we can help you. Ganun lagi yung so that we can help you. No? If kasi hindi ka magiging honest dito, ganyan. Although di ko na sinasabi, parang ganun lang, no? As honestly as possible so that we know how we can help, and we know how we will give you the treatment that you need. Ganun yung namin. Ganun yung kaya nga again, being an assessor, being a therapist is a skill, no? It's not for everybody. Okay? To give you a perspective, in our batch, meron kaming 4 sections sa batch namin sa undergrad. Ang nag-clinical lang sa amin, 2 lang. Hindi, 3 na. 3 na actually. 3 na yung nag-clinical. Ako, 4 sections. That I know, 3 lang kami nag-clinical. 3 lang kami nag-assessment and therapy. Ganun ka career or ganun ka yung mga clinical psychologists. Reference majority of psychology majors. Okay? Pero sa masters, almost every one of us are clinical major. Yung mga clinical, pinakamadami sila sa kung saan ako nag-aaral yun. No? Yung IO, sunod yung IO, and then pinakakongi yung human development. Okay? So, ganun. That's how, that's why I always mention that these projective tests are very complicated to use. They are quite enjoyable if you're like me, but of course, hindi naman nga lahat pwede sa ganito class assessment. Okay? Sige. Meron din tayong CAT or Children Apperception Test kasi ito pang adult to, yung TAT. Yung Children Apperception, ang nandito is mga animals, no? Animals yung tinitigan. Siyempre, iba mga children animals, no? Just like them. Basta yun. And then draw on test. Ito, ilibas niya yung pag-draw ko yung humans. Dito is a person. Pag drawing ka ng isang tao, may draw. Paglalakad din drawing niya. Yung pagbabae, no? Tapos, pag ganun yung ginawa niya, meron naman na yun, sabihin niya, lalaki siya, drawing, babae. Okay naman, babae din yung lalaki. But of course, huwag ka mag-assume na sexual siya. Kasi, for example, may kaming kaya, babae siya, drawing niya lalaki, tapos yung sinay din drawing niya, sinabi niya anak niya. Okay, So, formal. May mga times na ganun. Ibig sabihin nun, masyado siyang, yung self-image niya is based sa motherhood niya. Kaya nandun yung bata. But of course, depende din sa client. And then, the AP, pwede din lalabas din dito yung mga aggression, ganyan, no? Even yun nga, yung homosexuality tendency, lumalabas din dito. So, but of course, it's not enough. Okay, hindi naman yung mga yan. Kailangan mo pa rin ng ibang mga supplementary information. Kinetic family drawing, KFD, dito naman mga family, no? Usually dito lumalabas yung mga problems about family, ganyan. And then SACS sentence completion test or SSCT. Ito yung merong mga I am afraid of and then black. Ganyan. So, kukompletuin mo yung sentence. So, that is a form of projective test. So, sample CAT card, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the card one. So, what is happening in this picture? Ganyan. Tapos, may mga ibang pa nila yung rat. Hindi ko alam kung napansin niyo yung rat, no? But if yun yung una yung nakita, it says something then. This is, ang theme nitong card na to is more on authority figures, like father or mother. Okay? Pinoproject yung father sa or mother. And then, usually father na, yung pinoproject sa lahat. And then, yung sometimes, pag nakita to ng bata, it signifies low self-esteem or something like that. But of course, don't do that. Hindi pa tayo expert dyan. Okay? So, that's CAT. Again, projective tests require training before administering and scoring it. So, psychometricians are not yet allowed for this. Only licensed psychologists. Okay? So, kung di pa kayo licensed psychologist or wala kayong mga psychologist na supervisor, don't administer this. Okay? And then, behavioral assessment methods, basically, yung i-assess mo yung behavior ng isang tao. What a person does in situation rather than on inferences about attributes he has or more globally. So, ang personality kasi it's latent. Kumbaga, parang group yan ng pattern natin. No? Parang, and then it's very inferential. Ibig sabihin, parang idea lang siya. Ito yung gagawin ng tao, hypothetically speaking. Ganun siya, di ba? Kasi yung mga test, ganun, hypotheticals lang sila. Yan ang behavioral assessment, behaviors na talagang tinitignan. Okay? So, psychometricians can do behavioral assessment. Bilisan na natin, no? Kasi oras na. So, who is the assessor? Who is the client, no? Sa mga clients natin. Yung ginagawa namin usually kapag interview, assess namin yung behavior. Paano siya mag-start, gano'n kabilis, gano'n kabagal, ano yung content na sinasabi niya, and so on. So, ayan. So, why? The reason is to provide behavioral baseline data with which other behavioral data may be compared, and to provide a record of assessive behavioral strengths and weaknesses, and to pinpoint environmental conditions that are acting to trigger, maintain, or extinguish certain behavior. So, other than observing the person to provide behavioral assessment, pwede din naman yung tanungin mo yung mga ginagawa niya sa bahay, tanong mo yung ginagawa niya sa relationships niya, tanong yung ginagawa niya sa tao. So, that is also behavioral cues, or dun mo makikita yung behavior ng isang tao. And the reason we do behavioral assessment is because, for example, may certain mga psychological disorders na very behavioral. Like, say for example, yung anxiety o kaya yung OCD. Di ba? Ano yung mga ginagawa ng OCD? Yung hugas kamay lagi, literal na hugas ng kamay, meron silang mga laging inaayos. No? Bakit? Ano yung mga circumstances ng buhay nila na nagli-lead for them to do that? Okay? Kasi doon natin makikita sa behavioral assessment. So, and then analyzing the data. So, basically, you will jot down every behavior, the reason for the behavior, and then the outcome of the behavior. And then, paano mo analyze yan? It really depends. Maraming ways of measuring it. Also, the reliability, validity, and utility are very complicated. Data is advanced. Even though it's also an advanced technique. Okay? Hindi ko naman siya i-emphasize kasi mas maganda mag-observe sa objective ways. So, how to first yung behavioral observation skills. So yung skill, for example, kadalas siyang ganito, gano'n siya kadalas mag-alala, gano'n siya kadalas sumakit, gano'n siya kadalas nagiging aligaga or nagiging something like that. No? It can be recorded and focus din. And cassette recorder, kung familiar pa kayo sa cassette recorder. Alam niyo ba yung cassette recorder? Alam niyo ba yung tape na yun? Okay. So this is may assessor to. Yung kumbaga may assessor na mag-observe sa assessee. Now, pwede din naman mismo siya observe sa niya. So, self-monitoring. So, it's a form of assessment and also a tool for intervention, lalo na sa mga taong highly anxious. No? Kailan sila nagiging anxious o kaya naman yung mga nag-anxiety attack, anong mga circumstances nila tuwing nagka-anxiety attack sila, ano yung naisip nila, ano yung ginagawa nila, and so on. And minsan, kapag nagiging aware tayo no, sa mga nangyayari sa atin sa buhay natin, nagiging self-monitor natin sarili natin, it can be therapeutic. No? Kasi for example, you may take smoking. When are the times to leave for smoke? No? Pag alam mo mga years old, ang ginagawa. Diba? Namumonitor sa okay? And even nandiyan panic. Pag na-realize na, nag-anxiety na ako, nagpa-panic na ako, mag-breathing exercises na ako. So, ma-achieve mo lang yan through self-monitoring. Okay? So, analog studies, research. Yung mga analog studies na to, research investigation in which one or more variables or similar will variable. Ba't ko nilagay ito? To assess other forms of assessment, behavioral assessment. Okay? Sa research naman. And then sa situational performance measure, pag bibigyan ka ng situation, and then titignan kung ano yung gagawin mo. Yung leaderless group technique na kung saan ginagamit to usually sa IO para sa mga managerial positions na di ko alam kung yung ginagawa sa Pilipinas kasi minsan kung kilala mo yung manager mo, magiging manager ka din. Joke lang, minsan lang yan. Leadership, parang leaderless group technique na kung saan tatanggalin lahat ng leaders ninyo tapos titignan kung sino mag-rise up to become the leader of the group. No? And then role play din, pwede. Usually sa job interviews, for example, merong gantong employer, merong gantong customer, anong gagawin mo? So, yun. And the psychophysiological methods or biofeedback, for example, i-hook up ka sa isang machine, for example, MRI or yung EEG ba yung tawag doon. Tapos parang may papakitang mga pictures or may papakitang mga videos or even may ikwento sa'yo and then titignan kung ano yung feedback ng physiological na katawan mo. So that is biofeedback. And then plethysmograph, biofeedback instrument that records the volume of a part of body arising from variations of blood supply. Minsan kasi, for example, pag nagagalit ka, yung blood mo saan pumupunta, sa head or saan man, gano'n. Ito, penile plethysmograph for penile dysfunction naman ginagamit. And then polygraph, no? Lie detector, which is not accurate. Lie detector that does not really detect lies, but physiological responses associated with lying. Heartbeat, sweat rate. Pero itong heartbeat and sweat rate kasi, it can also be associated with nervousness, no? Na baka ma-found out nila, kumbaga na magkaroon ng false positive yung machine na akala nila nagsisinungaling ka, in fact, you're telling the truth. Diba? So that's why it's not ano. Tapos subjective pa to eh. Meron silang mga merong mga nag-check, diba? Parang hindi siya ganun ka-accurate. So far, do you have any questions with regards to the behavioral assessment? Madali eh. So last na lang, what is the cost of personality test and some projective test? So ito yung kasi usually nakakalimutan ng lahat na may bayad. Nung last time nga, merong isang client na parang, sasabihin ko ba ng profession nung nagsabi sa kanya. Basta parang may hinihingi silang, hinihingi silang services sa amin. Psychological report. Psychological report for their doc. Tapos, isang professional. Kasi pag-check kami, kasi upper license yan eh. So, kailangan talaga may charge. Tapos sabi naman professional. Bakit sila namimili? Papel lang naman yan. Ano namin ko, gustong pumunta doon sa office ng visit. Anong papel? Kayo nga din, papel lang din naman nilalabasin nyo. Tapos ang mahal-mahal yung mag-charge. Tapos pag kami, ganun, hindi, walang meaning yung papel. Hindi kasi nila alam na hindi lang naman papel ang psychological report. It's a process. It's unang-una sa lahat may test. Pangalawa yung oras ng assessor, no? Pangatlo, yung mga credentials ng assessor. Ano bang ginagawa ng mga mga templated lang yung ginagamit nila mga eh. I not believe in it. Kasi mga all professions, they produce papers. But they're not just papers. May cost yung mga, may value yung mga yan. That's why it's not just a paper. No? Nakakainis lang na parang itong professional na sasabihin niya sa amin na papel lang yan. Dude, ikaw din papel lang nilalabas mo. Pero may value yan, alam mo. Ganun din yung sa amin. That's why it's very frustrating here in the Philippines that psychology is not respected. Believe it or not, psychology is not yet respected field in this country. No? It's ang tingin sa atin ng mga tao is kwak-kwak. Okay? So it's quite frustrating sometimes, but wala, ganun talaga. No? Hindi pa tayo advanced enough as a society to recognize the value of psychological tests. That's why now, no, in my teaching, I try to impart to my students the value, no, even the monetary value of some of our tests. Okay? Na-mention ko yung value ng intelligence test na umabot ng 50 to 80K. Ngayon yung personality test, mas mura sila, pero di pa rin sila mura. Okay? MMPI is 26,000. Again, wala pa yung shipping tsaka customs fee. Na minsan yung customs fee, alam niyo naman dito sa Philippines, no? Customs, hindi ganun consistent. So yung NIAPI is 22,000, 16PF is 6,200, but this is only the online version, yung software lang. So yung mismong paper, if I'm not mistaken, nasa 10K din siya. TET is quite mura lang siya kasi since it's 4,300. Rorschach ink blot is 5,000. Manuals not included. Yung manuals, it can range from 1,000 to 8,000. And there are a lot of manuals kasi there are a lot of ways to score Rorschach. No? So, yan nakita sa Amazon nasa 8,000. Diba? So, it's not cheap. No? And the paper that we will produce in the psych report is not cheap. It's a product of our labor, our expertise, and all that we instruments that we use. Okay? May nakaka-figure na pala. For example, mag-medical exam. Anong bibigay sa'yo? Papel. Diba? This is certified. Blah, 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 blah. Pero magkano yun? Diba? It ranges from 1,000 to 5,000. It's not just a paper. Not to mention, konti lang ang nag-aano ng psychological report. In San Fernando, as far as I know, yung legitimate na psychological testing centers are only 3. Yung sa amin, kay Argao, tsaka yung sa Telabasagan, yung kay Sir Arvin. So, di supply and demand doon. So, it's just not a paper. Nakakainis lang talaga yung professional na yan na talagang meron pa rin discrimination sa profession natin. So, I hope you're ready for that when the time comes. Okay? So, with that, I will be ending the presentation. I hope you don't have any questions.